Don't you like the idea that T. Boone Pickens is out there on the playing field now and has what appears to be an innovative idea?
I do, and I think it's really significant that one of the most successful oil industry figures is now investing $1 billion of his own money in windmills. He's looked at the figures that I was sharing with you a moment ago. Wind is competitive. Just this past week, we saw Texas approve massive new transmission lines to use wind power as a substitute for the old ways of producing electricity. Now, I don't see him as a competitor on this. There are really a lot of common features in what he's saying. Now, the idea of using natural gas for cars, natural gas, I think, is an important transition fuel. It has fewer CO2 emissions than either coal or oil, especially coal. I think that it makes more sense to put the bulk of our effort to transform the car and truck fleet towards electricity, because electricity can be produced from renewable sources indefinitely. It's inexhaustible. There's enough solar energy that hits the surface of the planet in 40 minutes to provide a full year's worth of energy for the entire world. We just have to listen to what the engineers and scientists are telling us about the advances in the efficiency and the reductions in cost of how we can use solar and wind and also geothermal.
But when it comes to T. Boone Pickens, shouldn't it be all hands on deck?
Yep.
And don't you approve of the idea that he should go forward with this?
He wants to move
natural gas
in one direction, move wind in another direction, and convert the fleet. The wind is producing electricity, and then he wants to move natural gas into cars. But if we're going to convert cars and trucks, we should do it one time toward electricity. But there are vehicles running today on natural gas. Chattanooga, Tennessee has natural gas buses. It's a respectable option. But I think that in the long term, the better approach is to make this investment in a unified national grid that has low losses in transmission, that has the smart grid features that allows individuals to put up photovoltaic solar panels and sell electricity back into the grid, and shift over to renewable sources. Now, the other thing that Boone Pickens agrees on is when he says we really can't drill our way out of this because the new discoveries, and he knows about the new discoveries, he's got chapter and verse, they have been coming in at a much slower rate than the demand for oil and coal have been increasing.
This comes under the heading of Politics Makes Strange Bedfellows. You have common cause with T. Boone Pickens, who 4 years ago was a principal financer of the Swift boat attack ads against your friend John Kerry.
Yeah, and I think it's an illustration of how this climate crisis has to push us as Americans to take this issue out of the old partisan squabbling and political fighting. We have to be in this as Americans, and America should be leading the world community to confront this climate crisis.
Speaking of which, it was not so long ago that you called President Bush a moral coward on this issue for not standing up to his financial interest. For the last 2 years, Democrats have dominated the Congress of the United States, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. There have been no major sweeping initiatives coming out of this Democratic-controlled Congress. How would you characterize them?
Well, I think that when you don't have 60 votes in the Senate to overcome filibusters, nothing can happen.
But you can put it on the agenda and try to move the country.
And they have, and they haven't succeeded because there is still a close battle in the Congress. But sure, I think the Congress ought to do more, and I think that's one reason why this upcoming election is really important. But I want to see both parties and the Libertarians and others also coming in with constructive proposals to solve this. I think the focus now is past President Bush toward what's going to happen in January when a new president takes office, a new Congress is sworn in. I'm trying to enlarge the political space within which this debate takes place and reset the debate so that we focus on how, as a practical matter, when we have the political will to act, there's a concrete plan in place to really shift over to renewable energy.
Did Hillary Clinton reset this debate when she said there should be a summer holiday on the federal gas tax?
Well, I don't want to get into a primary battle that I successfully avoided getting into while it was
a primary
going on.
battle. She's speaking to an issue that you feel very strongly.
I disagreed with those who wanted a so-called gas tax holiday, and I think taking it from that to
was
sort
that
of the whole,
irresponsible on her part? Do you think?
I'm not going to label. I'm not going to label friends of mine irresponsible. I think that particular proposal wasn't one I agreed with. Was in response to what people are feeling with gasoline prices, and we've got to respond to the gasoline price increase. But here's the point, Tom. The people of this country are ready for bolder, more dramatic answers. The real way to bring gasoline prices down is not by going back to try more of the same things that have not worked in the past, but to say, wait a minute, now is the time for a really dramatic shift over to renewable energy.
But that gets back to what I was saying earlier. Is it time for American politicians, Republicans and Democrats and independents alike, to say to the American people, we're going to have to go through some pain here. $4 gasoline, it's a price that you're paying. We're going to have to get through this. You can't expect the government to bail you out. We're going to have to move to another level in which we can produce alternative energy, and you're going to have to live with that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put it exactly that way, but essentially, yes, it's time for people, for policymakers and candidates to say to the American people what they already know. Gimmicks are not going to work. We've had these little...
But then what do you say to the trucker or to the delivery man on Main Street or to the person who has to commute in California an hour every day about what's going on in their lives? Because this has become a tax that runs a couple $100 a week. What do they do in the meantime?
Well, it's a tax that we're now paying to Saudi Arabia and Venezuela and the other foreign oil producers that are providing 7 out of every 10 gallons of gas that we burn. And the price will continue to go up until we stop being suckered by this game that we've been trapped in. Incremental baby steps are no longer responsible proposals. Now is a time, and rarely such times do come in the history of our nation. Now is one of them. We have to have a bipartisan commitment to change that game, to break out of this trap and shift over to renewable sources of energy. You know, as we do that, the price of the renewable energy options go down. Think about what happened in the computer revolution. We saw cost reductions for silicon computer chips of 50% every year and a half for the last 40 years. We're now beginning to see the same kind of sharp cost reductions as the demand grows for solar cells. They build new, more efficient facilities to build these solar cells. They're made out of sand. We're not going to run out of that. And when we have the investment to make more of them, the cost goes down. And we're now seeing concentrating solar plants in the desert where they put up these mirrors and catch the sunlight to boil water and produce electricity. They're signing contracts for 12 cents a kilowatt hour right now, which is competitive. With the long distance transmission lines underground, very efficient, that take it from the centers where the solar power facilities are to the cities where the electricity is burned, this is going to bring energy costs down. But we have to make up our minds that it's time to make the investment in switching over from this debilitating, dangerous, costly dependence on foreign energy sources and polluting sources that are destroying the livability of the planet, and make up our minds that we're going to do the right thing for ourselves and future generations.
Let's talk about your role in that debate. This is what Senator Obama had to say about Al Gore in a future Obama administration, if there is one.
I will make a commitment that Al Gore will be at the table and play a central part in us figuring out how we solve this problem.
And this is what your old friend James Carville, who helped make you a vice president once before, had to say about what Obama ought to be thinking. If I were Obama, I would ask Al Gore to serve as vice president and energy czar in his administration to reduce our consumption and reliance on foreign energy sources. This was your response on CNN. Would you serve in the next administration if you were invited No. I haven't ruled out the idea of getting back into the political process at some point. This was in December of last year. At some point in the future. Don't expect to, but if I did get back, it would be as a candidate for president, not in any other position. How can you, given the passion that you feel about this issue and the enormity of the dimensions that we're dealing with here, turn down the idea that you could be in the administration as a vice president or as an energy czar or as both?
Well, I really respect and appreciate what Senator Obama and my good friend James Carville and others have said, and I appreciate Senator McCain making some generous comments. But I personally feel that my own best role is to try to bring about a sea change in public opinion.